In the dusty hills of Galilee, over 2,000 years ago, a movement began, one that would reverberate across continents, languages, and civilizations. At the heart of this movement stood a carpenter's son named Jesus of Nazareth. But he was not alone. Surrounding him was a group of men and women who left behind their trades, families, and expectations to follow a path of uncertainty and revelation. Today, we remember them as the apostles. But who were they, really? In this episode, we explore the apostles and what were their lives before they met Jesus, and how did he come to choose them? And among these chosen few, why does one woman, Mary Magdalene, stand out, remembered not just as a follower, but as the apostle to the apostles? This is their story, woven from history, scripture, and tradition. This is the story of the 12 and the one. The word apostle comes from the Greek apostolos, meaning one who is sent. In the early 1st century, apostles were not religious figures. They were envoys, emissaries, messengers with a mission. Jesus adopted this language to frame his closest followers not merely as students or companions, but as those he would one day send out to continue his work. According to the Synoptic Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, Jesus selected 12 men to serve as his inner circle. 12, a symbolic number in Jewish tradition, reflected the 12 tribes of Israel. With this choice, Jesus was making a statement. This was a renewal, a new covenant with the people of God. But these men were not scholars. They were not temple priests or political leaders. They were fishermen, tax collectors, zealots, brothers, ordinary men with extraordinary destinies. Simon Peter was the first. Originally just Simon, he and his brother Andrew were casting their nets when Jesus called them. "Come, follow me, and I will make you fishers of men." Peter would become the most prominent of the 12, impulsive, devoted, flawed, and ultimately the rock upon which the early church was built. Andrew, his brother, is sometimes overlooked, yet he was a disciple of John the Baptist before following Jesus. He is remembered as a bringer, bringing his brother to Jesus, and later bringing others to the faith. Next came James and John, the sons of Zebedee, fiery, passionate men Jesus nicknamed Boanerges, the sons of thunder. They left their father's fishing business behind to walk into the unknown. John would become the beloved disciple, associated with profound theological insight and the authorship of the gospel bearing his name. James, meanwhile, would become the first of the apostles to die for his faith. Executed by Herod Agrippa around 44 AD, Philip and Bartholomew, also known as Nathanael, were called next. Philip is portrayed as a practical man, often questioning but deeply sincere. Bartholomew's story is thinner in the Gospels, but tradition says he brought the message of Jesus as far as India or Armenia. Then there was Matthew, the tax collector, a man reviled by his own people for working with the Romans, yet called by Jesus without hesitation. His inclusion among the 12 was radical, a statement of grace. Thomas is most remembered for his doubts, but this characterization may be unjust. His questioning nature led him to deeper faith, and tradition claims he took the gospel eastward to India, where Christians, known as the St. Thomas Christians, trace their roots to him. James, the son of Alphaeus, sometimes called James the Less, remains mostly mysterious, as does Thaddeus, also called Judas, son of James. Some traditions conflate him with Jude, the patron saint of lost causes, and then Simon the Zealot. Zealot may refer to a political affiliation, a group seeking to overthrow Roman occupation, or to a passionate personality. His inclusion shows Jesus' radical unity. A zealot and a tax collector, natural enemies, united in purpose. Finally, Judas Iscariot, the name that lingers in history as a symbol of betrayal. He managed the group's finances, he witnessed the miracles, and in the end, he handed Jesus over to his enemies for 30 silver coins. The reasons remain: debated, greed, disillusionment, or a desperate desire to force Jesus into political action. Whatever the motive, Judas' story ends in tragedy. After his death, he was replaced by Matthias, chosen by the remaining apostles through prayer and the casting of lots. Thus, the number 12 was preserved. These were the men Jesus called friends. He traveled with them, taught them, sent them out in pairs to heal and preach. They saw his miracles, heard his secrets, and ultimately abandoned him at the hour of his greatest suffering. Yet they returned, transformed by the resurrection. Tradition tells us they spread out across the known world, from Rome to India. proclaiming the risen Christ and often meeting brutal ends. Peter was crucified upside down in Rome. Andrew, on an X-shaped cross in Greece. James was beheaded. Thomas was pierced with spears. Each story a testimony to enduring faith. But what of the women? Among Jesus' followers were many women, disciples in their own right. They funded his ministry, hosted gatherings, and remained when the men fled. At the center of this circle stood Mary Magdalene. The Gospels tell us she was from Magdala, a town on the western shore of the Sea of Galilee. She was healed by Jesus, freed from 7 demons, a symbolic number suggesting a profound spiritual restoration. Mary Magdalene is mentioned by name more than most of the male apostles. She was present at the crucifixion. She was there when Jesus' body was laid in the tomb, and most importantly, she was the first witness to the resurrection. In the Gospel of John, she meets the risen Christ outside the tomb. Mistaking him at first for a gardener, she recognizes him when he speaks her name, Mary. It is one of the most intimate and powerful moments in all Scripture. Jesus then commissions her, "Go to my brothers and tell them." And with those words, she becomes the first preacher of the resurrection, the Apostola Apostolorum, the apostle to the apostles. Despite her central role, Mary Magdalene's story was later obscured. In the 6th century, Pope Gregory the Great conflated her with the sinful woman who anoints Jesus' feet, transforming her image into that of a repentant prostitute. This was not based on Scripture, but on association. Modern biblical scholarship and the Church itself have since corrected this mischaracterization. Mary Magdalene was not defined by sin, but by devotion. She was not shamed, but sent. Her role challenges assumptions about leadership in the early Church and opens doors to a more inclusive view of apostolic witness. The apostles were not chosen for their perfection. They misunderstood, they argued, they fled in fear, but they also returned in courage, endured suffering, and carried a message of hope to the ends of the earth. Their legacy is complex. Some were martyred, some founded churches, some faded into the shadows of history. And yet, their names endure, inscribed in cathedrals, remembered in prayers, honored in the traditions of buildings. And Mary Magdalene, once forgotten, now stands restored in dignity and prominence. A witness not just to resurrection, but to the full inclusion of women in the story of salvation. The apostles' journey did not end with Jesus' ascension. It began there. They faced a hostile empire, a skeptical world, and their own human limitations, but they carried within them something stronger, an encounter with the divine that reshaped their understanding of life and death. In them, we see a reflection of ourselves, flawed yet called, ordinary yet capable of the extraordinary. And in Mary Magdalene, we see a voice once silenced, now resounding through the ages. A woman who saw the empty tomb and did not keep silent. The 12, the One. Their stories are not just relics of history. They are the foundation of a faith that continues to shape our world.